After over a year off and extensive injuries, not a lot of people thought Dan Hooker was going to reach the top five of the lightweight division, let alone against a heavy pressure wrestler in Mateusz Gamrot. But in an electrifying decision victory, Dan Hooker pulled off a split decision win. So, this is how Dan Hooker out hustled Mateusz Gamrot. So, let's break it down. Hooker pulled off the win by using immense pressure, effective scrambles, attacking the head while defending takedowns, and superior boxing and body work. So let's start with pressure. Hooker put insane amounts of pressure on Gamrot, especially after defending takedowns. This pressure got Gamrot very uncomfortable and allowed Hooker to capitalize on the issues in Gamrot's boxing, and Gamrot naturally just panics. He's not naturally a striker. So, Dan Hooker breaks away from the clinch, gets back on the pressure, pumps out a jab, gets Gamrot to preemptively slip on the inside. Hooker lands a right hand, and then a left hook as Gamrot's going out to his left. I'm almost trying to employ like a Philly shell, but he's not really hiding behind the shoulder, so the left hook just hits him on the temple and sends him to the mat wobbling, but just baiting out those defensive flaws with pressure. And here you can really see just how uncomfortable Gamrot is under pressure. Dan Hooker's pressuring him back, and Gamrot simply doesn't really have his feet under him properly. He's trying to rush out of the pocket. You see it, Dan pumps out a jab as Gamrot's almost like reaching, misses the right hook, but lands the left hook as Gamrot's striking and trying to move at the same time. Just again, baiting out those flaws. I'll talk about this a bit more in depth later, but Dan also used a lot of like snap kicks to the body and left round kicks just to control space. Of course, it's a very long fight, and he just used those to push Gamrot back. He also used that pressure to almost bait out the shots of Gamrot to where he can control the neck and or sprawl and start landing elbows to the side of the head, which, assuming won him the second round and were very important in this fight. Again, Dan has Gamrot up against the fence. Gamrot, wanting to relieve some of the pressure, throws out a jab. Hooker parries it and then lands his own right cross as Gamrot's circling out, just forcing out a punch from Gamrot and then countering it, forcing it out with the pressure. Then, towards the end of the second round, Dan Hooker just commits with the flurry, mixing in hooks to the head and body. And as he gets really close, Gamrot sort of drops to the mat. Not for a knockdown, but he kind of tries to go for a takedown and just gets smothered. Hooker sprawls, lands a couple elbows, and at the end of the second round, they get up and Gamrot's kind of on his knees. And while Hooker didn't do a huge amount of damage in that specific exchange, just the body language of Hooker walking down Gamrot and Gamrot very clearly being panicky and scared does a lot for the scoring. Here, Gamrot's trying to control the hand. He's very reactive. He always tries and reaches and grabs and just reacts to literally anything that Hooker does. So reaches a hand, Hooker steps in, Gamrot jabs, Hooker counters Gamrot on the inside with just a straight right, just simple, clean. Now Hooker has Gamrot up against the fence. He's pouring at Gamrot's hand as Gamrot's kind of more southpaw right now. Gamrot does switch between stances. Gamrot, to try and, get rid of the hand trapping, throws like an up jab or like a lead uppercut. And if you know quite a bit about striking, more particularly boxing, a lead uppercut without any setup is a bit risky. So Hooker just moves a little bit out of the way, jab, cross, and then hook as Gamrot is again circling out and not being all that defensively responsible. Hooker then picks up on the fact that Gamrot is now just putting up a really high guard as he realizes that reaching out is getting him caught. Hooker makes the read and just starts ripping body shots towards the ends of the rounds, just kind of put a stamp on them. He does this a lot in the third round, and it pays off in the scoring very well, and it just does some good damage. Now, let's take a look at the grappling, where Hooker out-scrambled Gamrot and used guillotines and headlocks to effectively scramble. Okay, so Dan Hooker throws a push kick to the body, and Gamrot capitalizes and shoots and goes for sort of a low single. Hooker gets a whizzer and sits down to his knee just to try and have better control of Gamrot. He ditches that position and just immediately starts scooting his way to the fence, as a lot of fighters from City Kickboxing have really, really good takedown defense and get-ups, especially against the fence. Gamrot, again, quick to scramble through positions, starts trying to pass guard. Hooker, though, gets butterfly hooks, and he did this a lot during the fight. He never sat in guard. He was always very quick to get his legs on the inside. And he's using underhook to just try and get space and almost help get up. Gamrot, however, tries to cycle through positions, and as Dan's sitting forward, Gamrot tries to go for the headlock. And because he's cycling through these positions so quickly, there's a lot of opportunities to escape. He doesn't sit in control. So Hooker is able to just get up from that position using the underhook and just fighting in the hands, and he's able to break away. Here, Gamrot sort of stuns Hooker with a jab, and he immediately goes in for the takedown while Hooker's off balance. Hooker, not wanting to get ground and pound finished, gets butterfly hooks, but he controls posture. He waits till he's ready to get up. Gamrot starts trying to throw ground and pound, but Gamrot's ground and pound, not gonna lie, it's kind of terrible. It's just around the side, just kind of flailing his arms. Hooker then uses that opportunity, as Gamrot is very high over him, to just try and roll over and get back up, as there's not much threat of getting your back taken and being subbed by Gamrot. And then, as Gamrot's trying to circle around to the back, Hooker's able to attack the hands and break away. Hooker's very good at this off the back, just attacking the hands and immediately getting on what you need to be doing. Then Hooker gets back on the pressure, and because he's moving forward, he can kind of tell when Gamrot's going to shoot at him. So Gamrot drops down for the low single. Hooker moves away and starts trying to scoot his ankle out, but he opts to sit and sprawl. He lands a couple of good elbows from this position. Eventually, Gamrot starts to try and rise up, and Hooker just falls over the top of Gamrot, and they get back up. Gamrot begins timing the body kick and takes Hooker down off of that. Hooker controls posture, gets butterfly hooks, and he sort of sits and he waits, he freezes, and then he explodes, gets to the fence, and then as Gamrot, as before, is trying to circle around the back. Hooker starts trying to get up and immediately attacking the hands as Gamrot is going through positions almost too quickly. You want to sit and you want to control Hooker and sort of neutralize his get-ups, and Gamrot's really trying to cycle through and he's doing things too fast, but Hooker's able to just capitalize and get up off of those mistakes. As Hooker is pressuring a lot, this allows him to time the entries better and defend them better. Gamrot shoots in on a single. Hooker immediately goes for the guillotine. He has a really, really good guillotine. That's where he got the nickname Hangman. And this would be pretty tight as Gamrot immediately gives up position and tries to roll out of it. However, he gets back on the single. Hooker thinks about controlling the head, but then starts pushing the head down and starts landing some good elbows to the side of the head. This is kind of what won him the second round, just in these grappling exchanges, doing just chipping damage with the elbows to the body, to the elbows to the head, until he's eventually able to rise back up to his feet. A pretty similar exchange happens here where Gamrot goes for the single leg, and he actually carries Hooker all the way to the other side of the cage, right? He tries to go for a different type of takedown because the low single isn't really working. Except Hooker's very tall and he has good balance and he's really flexible because he's a kickboxer, so, flexibility. Hooker then again attacks the neck and brings Gamrot down. Look at the position that Gamrot's in. Also, look at the position that Hooker's in, but look at where Gamrot is, right? From what Hooker was doing. Right, that is not a position where you can shoot or pursue a takedown. Gamrot knows this, so he tries to cycle through position and spin out, gets back on the leg. Hooker, however, just again gives up his back, commits to attacking the hands, not repeating the same move during the same exchange, right? He's not going for the guillotine multiple times in one grappling sequence, right? Goes for the guillotine, gets good position, then starts, either sprawling out or doing other things. Gamrot again goes in for a shot, and he actually gets pretty deep on this. Hooker starts landing elbows to the side of the head, but he realizes that Gamrot's pretty deep on this shot, and he needs to start actively defending it. So Hooker uses the old oil check special and drags Gamrot over to where he completely whiffs on his second takedown attempt, and Hooker just, again, at the end of the round, just starts elbowing the side of the head. And now I just want to highlight the importance of Dan Hooker's bodywork, particularly with the push kick, and also just some of the more technical boxing exchanges in this fight. And here we have a good 5, 6, 7 times where Hooker is just landing the push kick to the body. And the way he does this, right, is at the beginning of the fight, Gamrot was very twitchy and he was very he reached out a lot for Hooker's hands, right? So if Hooker pumped out a jab, Gamrot would try and meet it, right? So Hooker would pump out a jab, Gamrot would meet his hands, and that means his hands are away from his body, or his arms are away from his body, which opens up attacks to the body. Hooker being long, steps in the push kick, and you see this happen so many times. He even starts at points switching to southpaw and landing this, and faking the cross and landing it, but just having quite a lot of success with that attack over and over and over. And it was a really good tool, not only to do damage, but to, put the pressure on Gamrot. Here, Hooker is just using his pressure to bait out the, poor boxing combinations of Gamrot. Here he fakes across. Gamrot tries to jab, and Hooker just pots him with a nice clean jab. Hooker has a very hard jab because he half throws it as a hook. He puts a lot of power into it. And then in another exchange, they're both southpaw this time, so he steps in, baits out the jab of Gamrot. Because they're both southpaw, Hooker counters with just a left cross. He then just starts to walk down Gamrot. Gamrot wanting to get away from the pressure, jabs and starts moving. Hooker throws a left cross and then he steps through, throws a right cross, just landing nicely as Gamrot's moving away. Then here, Gamrot pumps out a jab in the center of the cage, and then he puts up a high guard. Hooker just lands a long right hand, just almost around the guard, because again, you're a taller fighter, you can kind of pick your shots a little bit better. And that's how Dan Hooker beat Mateusz Gamrot. A very, very close fight. It was a split decision. I did have Hooker winning though. Absolutely no bias at all. But regardless, it was an insanely good win. I know a lot of people like to hate on Gamrot, me included. He has a lot of technical flaws, but he is good. Albeit it could have been a robbery, beat Arman Suyukin, and has really, really solid wins. And again, he was ranked number 5 at the time. Hooker, while coming off wins over Claudio Puelles and Jalen Turner, he was not favored to win this fight at all. And he had taken a lot of damage in the Jalen Turner fight and was coming off a broken arm. So I don't think anyone expected him to be in a position where he was ranked at number 5 now. So that's insanely impressive. And this win over Gamrot led him to a very important, possibly title eliminator fight against Justin Gaethje on March the 8th at UFC 313. A absolute hell of a fight, which I do favor Dan Hooker to win, and I'll break this fight down a little closer to when it happens, but I'm favoring Hooker to win by second or third round TKO. Regardless, hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown and enjoy the rest of your day.